Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Gumbel.
And I'm Terry Bradshaw.
And we welcome you to week number 7 here on the NFL Today. A doubleheader day of NFL action on CBS. And later tonight, Game 2 of the World Series. First, with half an hour to go before kickoff in our early games, here's a look at who's warming up. First, Vinny Testaverde will find his Bucs ahead of the Bears in the NFC Central standings as they meet today at Soldier Field. But Tampa Bay has lost 4 straight against Chicago. Mike Tomczak, greeted by former teammate Sterling Sharp. Tomczak was cut by Green Bay in the preseason. Today he leads the Browns against the Pack at Cleveland Stadium, looking for a little revenge. And Randall Cunningham is looking to the record books. He takes his Eagles into action against the Redskins at RFK and is just 31 rushing yards shy of breaking Fran Tarkenton's all-time quarterback rushing record. Now let's head right out to RFK Stadium where John Madden has more on the Eagles-Redskins matchup.
Thanks, Greg. You know, when you think of the Washington Redskins and Joe Gibbs, their offense, you always think of the Hogs, their offensive line, and everything starts there. Well, they still got the Hogs, but they aren't the same guys. They got a guy named Moe starting the left tackle today for Jim Lachey. They got Jacoby. He's moving from tackle to guard. McKenzie's a guard starting at center. Ed Simmons is starting at the right tackle. And you say, well, that's not too bad. They still got some Hogs, but then you look who they have to block. Here's Reggie White, maybe the best defensive lineman that ever played the game. And on this side, going against the guy starting in his first game is Clyde Simmons, also a Pro Bowl defensive end. Now, if you say, can these 5 guys block these 4 guys? No, no way. But they're going to have help. Anytime you think of the Hogs, you have to add Donnie Warren. He weighs 250 pounds. He stays in and block. In fact, he's only caught 2 passes all year. If you need more help, you bring in the other tight end, Ron Middleton. He weighs 270 pounds. He hasn't caught any passes all year. So you're not going to see a 5-on-4. You're going to see a 6-on-4 or a 7-on-4. Now, if you see 6-on-4, 2 guys are going to be double. And, of course, when you're going to double 2 guys, you're going to start out doubling Reggie White and Clyde Simmons. You know, an interesting thing, we're talking to Reggie White. He has 113 sacks, more than any down defensive lineman in the league. And the one guy that he's never sacked is Mark Rippon. He said, well, we'll see if we can change that today. Back to you, Greg and Terry.
All right, John, thanks very much. A couple of notes about the Eagles starting lineup on defense. Linebacker Seth Joyner will play today. He will wear a knee brace on that sprained left knee. And Izell Jenkins has been replaced at cornerback by John Booty. Jenkins is nursing a sore hamstring. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles have some things to do and some things to prove today.
Well, I think one of the things that Philadelphia has to do is they have to run the football. You know, they don't have Keith Jackson anymore, so one of their weapons is gone. So they have Walker. They've got to run the football. He had 78 yards in the first half. Last week against the Chiefs, only carried the ball 6 times in the second half. They have to run Herschel. The second thing is, I think Cunningham has got to stay in the pocket. Washington doesn't think that he can beat them if he stays in the pocket. His big deal is getting out and scrambling. 6 sacks last week. Maybe he won't want to stay in the pocket, but I really think the key today is they've got to run, and he's got to stay in that pocket.
Well, the Redskins and the Eagles have an eye on Dallas today as well, as Troy Aikman and his Cowboys go against Kansas City. 4-1 Dallas is co-leader with Philadelphia in the NFC East, and our Jim Gray has more from Texas Stadium.
The Kansas City Chiefs defense is a little bit banged up for this afternoon's game. Outside linebacker Chris Martin will not play. He's got a bad knee. He's going to be replaced by Lonnie Martz. Now, in addition, safety Albert Lewis is nursing a bad groin. He told me that he will start. However, he's not sure how long he'll be able to go. In his place, if he can't play, will be rookie Dale Carter. So with both of these injuries, the Chiefs are very concerned.
Well, you know, it concerns me a lot. Albert and Chris are very key factors in our defensive scheme, and it's gonna put a little damper on the spirits, but everybody else has to pick up the slack in their absence.
Michael, what about the injury to Albert Lewis? You guys going to try and take advantage of him and Chris Martin not being in the game?
Injury?
Well, Albert's got a bad groin. You going to try and run him around the field?
Albert Lewis not playing? Is he not playing or he's playing? I don't know.
He's probably going to play, but he is severely hampered.
Well, no, when you're in a game this magnitude, there's very few injuries can keep you out. Probably the only injury can keep you on a person like Albert Lewis out of this game is death. And he's not there yet, so I'm pretty sure he'll be playing.
For the Cowboys, Alan Weingrad will step in for Mark Tuinei at left tackle as the Cowboys look to win their 10th straight game here at Texas Stadium. Let's go back to New York to Terry and Greg.
All right, Jim, now, last week the Cowboys shut out Seattle, but they step up in class in the AFC.
Yeah, when I talked to Jimmy Johnson last night about this game, he was more concerned about Tooney at left tackle because he felt like if he could play in this game, he matched up better against a speed rusher and Derek Thomas. Now, Neil Smith on the other side rushing, but he was concerned about his left tackle. Vinograd more of a power blocker. Other thing he said, we got to stay out of 3rd and long. He doesn't want to get into 3rd and long. He's afraid that their pressure defense is too much for them.
All right, now after a bye week, the NFC Central is back in action with the Bears looking forward to the Bucs today and looking back to 2 weeks ago, playing against the Vikings. Jim Harbaugh called an audible that was intercepted and returned for a touchdown by Todd Scott. That got the Vikings back into the game and sent Bears coach Mike Ditka into orbit on the sidelines as Minnesota went on to the victory. The controversy continued long after the game. How's Harbaugh feeling about Iron Mike today? Our Matt Millen has more.
Guys, everybody in Chicago has been talking about Ditka and Harbaugh and what went on the sideline. So I ran into Harbaugh and asked him the question, and he said, look, not a big deal. My dad's a high school coach, so he's been yelling at me. I go to Michigan, Bo yells at me. I come here to Chicago, and he yells at me. That's not a big deal. He said, Peyton, Singletary, everybody's been yelled at, so it's time for us to put that behind us and keep on going. The thing here in Chicago that's the question is their defense, or really the lack of it, and they get some help today. Sean Gale will return off of injured reserve, and he's a guy that Ditka says they can lean on. He's a big hitter, he has a great attitude, and he'll help in the execution. They also get Richard Dent, who was nicked 2 weeks ago, having a full week of practice behind him, and he's ready to go, and they expect a big game from him. You know, and I look around this stadium, and I feel the great weather, the little nip in the air. You know, I'm starting to get a little anxious, and I'll tell you what, Bradshaw, you and I, let's get our helmets, run here out in the field, and give it a whirl. They haven't blocked me in 12 years. They shouldn't start now.
Oh, you ready for that?
Ah, shut up, Greg. Anybody can block that guy. Nobody wants to hear that mess.
Let's talk about Jim Harbaugh. It's been 2 weeks since that blow-up between Ditka and Harbaugh. Does that blow over, or is that still simmering?
It's over because guys like Ditka that scream and holler and rant and rave really have very little effect on a veteran football team. Although Harbaugh's a young quarterback, I think he puts it behind him. He's used to it. I don't agree with it. It has an effect. Surely it has an effect. But I don't think Jim Harbaugh let it bother him a bit. And then 5 years from now, I think he goes up to Ditka, hops him one and says, get back in your hole, leave me alone.
All right, the Cardinals host the Saints in one of our late games today. Chris Chandler making his 4th straight start at quarterback for Phoenix. Tim Rosenbaugh's been activated, recovering from his shoulder injury, and will dress for the game. But Cardinal coach Joe Bugle tells CBS Sports that the starting job is now Chandler's to lose. Meanwhile, there are 2 new starting quarterbacks today. 0-5 New England starts Tommy Hudson in place of the battered Hugh Millen against the NFL's only unbeaten team, the Miami Dolphins. And Stan Gelbaugh will go for the 1-5 Seattle Seahawks against the Raiders. Coming up, the San Francisco 49ers are 5-1, but Young to Rice has clicked on just 2 touchdowns. We'll tell you why and what they're going to do about it when we continue live from New York on the NFL Today.
The NFL Today is sponsored by Lincoln Mercury and the complete line of the 1992 Lincolns and Mercuries.
Welcome back, everyone. The Oilers play the Broncos at Mile High Stadium this afternoon, with Houston out to avenge last year's playoff loss. Denver head coach Dan Reeves is in the final year of his contract and still waiting to hear about his future with the team. There's talk now that he could be coaching elsewhere. I talked with Reeves a short time ago and asked him if he has heard from Broncos owner Pat Bowlen about a new contract.
Well, first of all, I really don't, care to talk about my contract. I feel like that's something that'll take care of itself. I got to worry about things that I have some control over. The relationship with Pat has been good in the past. I expect it to be good in the future. If he feels like he needs to make a change, certainly that's what his privilege is. He owns the ball club, and he's going to run it the way he thinks is best. Hopefully, he'll see that, me being retained as the head coach is the best way to go. If he doesn't, then certainly I'll understand. But I'm going to worry about something I have a little bit of control over. I have none whatsoever over my contract right now. And, when the end of the season is up, hopefully Pat and I will sit down and get it worked out.
Dan, is it your feeling that you'll be coaching the Broncos next year?
Well, I really don't know. As I said, I just know that Pat has told me when the season's over, we'll sit down and try to work it out, and hopefully that will be the case.
If all great coaches and great quarterbacks, it's been historically known, sometimes don't get along. How is your relationship right now with you and John? Good?
Well, I think our relationship is good. From my standpoint, I've really appreciated what John has come in and done this year. He's really worked hard and trying to get this offense going. I think he has a respect for me, and I certainly have a great deal of respect for him. you know, we don't socialize and go out together, but I don't think that's necessary for a coach-player relationship. So I think it's good. You know, from my standpoint, I think it's excellent.
Incidentally, running back Sammy Smith has been activated by the Broncos for today's game against the Oilers. Now, we have an update on a story we first reported 2 weeks ago on the so-called stashing of possibly healthy players on injured reserve. The NFL Today has learned the commissioner's office sent a memo to all 28 teams this week ordering them to submit their practice films from the September 23rd practices in an effort to make sure the IR players are not practicing. Furthermore, all team general managers and film coordinators must notarize that the films have not been altered or edited. More than 10 teams have already been questioned about specific injuries, and the league is planning unannounced spot checks at practices over the next 2 weeks. Well, the 49ers host the Falcons in a doubleheader game today. You may have noticed something missing this season in 49er football. It's the Jerry Rice touchdown catch. He only has 2 in 6 games. Our Randy Cross spoke with Rice and Steve Young about why they aren't connecting.
I go into a game saying, you know, I want Jerry with the football. You know, I got to get him the ball. And these, you know, the teams right now are taking not only 2 safeties and a linebacker, pushing them all into his corner. And we have to motion him, bring him across the field, and it's frustrating. I've thrown a couple interceptions trying to do something, trying to get him the ball. You know, we're a timing team, and I think they want to frustrate our timing, which means bumping him, you know, having a couple guys as he crosses the field, having him meet a couple of linebackers, things like that. And people have been taking some pretty cheap shots this year at him, and so he's got to be aware of that too.
How have you dealt with the frustration level?
I think I got so spoiled with Bill Walsh because I knew Bill would get me the football. Then Joe, I knew Joe would get me the football. No, it's different now, and I got to try to adjust to it. I realize we're not depending on 2 or 3 guys to win the ball game. We're working together as a team, and you know, what would I look like complaining and we 5-1?
Indeed. An update on John Taylor with that broken bone in his leg. He was placed on injured reserve yesterday and will miss an additional 4 weeks. Steve Young and Jerry Rice talking about Jerry getting bumped and pushed around. That's not the biggest problem with the Niners, is it?
No, it really isn't, because when you look at Jerry Rice actually being taken out of the offense or taken out of the end zone, you look at the positive side of it, which is now Ricky Waters is the all-purpose yardage man in the NFL, leading the NFC in rushing. Mike Sherrod having an outstanding year in place of John Taylor at wide receiver. Steve Young running and passing, a great threat. You know, the one difference in the offense with Young is I believe that Young comes back with 5 receivers out and goes 1, 2, 3, run. I think Montana goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then runs. The good thing is they're 5-1, and I think Jerry Rice has to get used to this because this may be very well the way all teams play him the rest of his career.
All right, Jerry, on the defensive side for San Francisco, banged-up linebacker Tim Harris will start, but will wear a brace to protect a sore right knee. Coming up next, Leslie Visser looks at the season of discontent for the Redskins' Mark Rippon. That and more when the NFL Today continues on CBS. Well, they're almost ready for football in Washington. The NFC East showdown between the Redskins and the Eagles. And Leslie Visser joins us now from RFK Stadium. That's not Leslie. There's Leslie. Hello, Leslie.
Hi, Greg. This is a tough year to be the incumbent in the nation's capital. Last year after the Super Bowl, Mark Rippon was voted the biggest guy in town, more popular than General Schwarzkopf. But by the home opener this year, he was being booed. Now, maybe it's because of his 19-day holdout. Maybe it's the injuries to the offensive line. But so far, this is no championship season.
When the passes that were thrown with pinpoint accuracy last season fall helplessly to earth this year, and performance ratings have a quarterback next to last in the NFC, should he expect to be booed?
I felt that was kind of a cheap shot and a slap in the face. I've had it before, you know, early on in my career where I've had to overcome adversity, and that's been fine. You know, you throw an interception, it's a reaction that's going to happen by the fans, so I've overcome those things.
The 2 interceptions that were returned for touchdowns against Phoenix sent Rippon into self-examination.
I'm not going to beat teams a lot with athletic ability. I'm going to do it by playing smart, making right decisions, and you know, going out there and being aggressive when situations arise.
Against Phoenix, were you thinking, is this an out-of-body experience?
And that was probably the best game I've played. That's the worst part about it. It's probably the best game and the best I felt going into the game all along.
Kind of like Doug Drabeck.
Yeah, well, you throw a 2-hitter. where those two hits happen to go for home runs, you know.
Let's face it, it's about this much difference each week between the best team and the worst team. And if you're not playing on all cylinders each week, you're going to get beat.
Last week's victory over the Broncos was played with a confidence reminiscent of last season, but not everyone is completely convinced.
Did Mark Rippon struggle a little bit in the beginning, and now he has it solved?
I have no idea about when we'll get it solved, how much we'll get it solved, how well they'll do.
I asked Rippon to treat the season kind of like a first semester. What kind of grades does he give? Well, reading defenses gets a low mark, all those interceptions. But another area, an ability to audible successfully, leads to high honors.
How overall do you think you've played this year?
I'd say B or C. I got to be hard on myself.
In a climate of high expectations, it's not enough for the Redskins to win. They now have to dominate, equaling the standard of a season past. We may never rest this way again.
As John Madden said earlier, the Redskins are tremendously concerned about their offensive line. Well, in the category of who am I and why am I here, Mo Elowanivi said, I just hope Clyde Simmons doesn't make a speed bump out of me, to which Mark Rippon just told me, not as much as I hope. Now, how critical is this game? 3 losses would be 3 in the division. What they have to do, Joe Gibbs said, could we win 10 straight games to finish the season? Yes. Are we likely to? No. Greg, it's critical.
You bet, Leslie. Thanks very much. We'll take a time out here, and then we'll check in with Pat O'Brien, who is standing by to take us around the NFL today. This Damon Berryhill 3-run homer last night was all Tom Glavine and the Atlanta Braves needed to take a 1-game-to-none lead over the Toronto Blue Jays in the World Series. Game 2 is tonight. Pat O'Brien ready for a long day at Atlanta's Fulton County Stadium and turns his attention right now from baseball to football. Hello, Pat.
All right, Greg. Hi, Terry. Hi, everybody. By the way, there is a football note on Damon Berryhill. He was the MVP of his 1982 Laguna Beach High School team. Funny what you can find in these media guides here. What's not in here is who their hero will be tonight. They always seem to find someone here at home. But today our topic on our little Sunday supplement is professional football and its heroes and the games they play around the NFL today. There was Jim Kelly and the Kelly girls doing his Pat Riley impersonation, and a good one, mind you. But when it comes to quarterbacks and their out-of-pocket spending, check out what fuels the rocket. And yes, it is the shoes.
I call these my GT Turbo. Gold tip turbo. They're real gold. It actually says 14K right there.
Another little tip for you kids from Randall Cunningham. And speaking of quarterbacks and quarter fronts, our next story is a toss-up.
Tossing a coin is a very simple probability. You have a 1 in 2 chance of being correct.
Try telling that to Jackie Slater. The Rams veteran has lost 10 tosses in a row. And a quarter for your thoughts, Jackie.
The odds of guessing 10 in a row wrong, that's...
Despite the odds, Slater's not about to turn tails.
I'm a heads man from the worst they go, and I'll be a head man until it's all done.
And is there a flip side to this?
To miss 11 in a row, that's going to be 1 in 2048.
Stay tuned for the payoff on this story. In the meantime, sing it, Shirley.
The name game.
In Chicago, there are 2 Mark Carriers and 3 Tim Ryans.
I said, now let's play a game.
We all know there's only one Ryan out there really playing.
Not to mention the family ties with the Jennings brothers squaring off while Uncle Mike keeps his eye on nephew Broderick Thomas, who says you can't tell the players without a scorecard.
Everybody knows everybody, and everybody's skinny some sort of way, so it's pretty interesting.
On your mark, let's start the family feud.
Speaking of feuds, who are they? Why are they here? Let's just play political football. Because William Perry has thrown his helmet into the race to tackle the weightier issues facing our land.
This is the man.
Really?
Yeah.
For what? Huh? President of what?
United States of America.
President
Where are you from?
President for the people.
Russia? You from Russia?
We for the people.
That's right.
For the people.
Hey, maybe those other candidates have it all wrong. Maybe we shouldn't cut the fat out of Washington. Not. I think he was kidding. Actually, out here, we think that William Perry, if he wasn't in football or politics, would make a heck of a catcher. Not even Sid Breen could get around him. Tonight, On that hill behind me, they're working out there. A great pitching matchup, David Cohn against John Smoltz. It all begins at 8 o'clock Eastern time with Baseball 92. I'll be here. Greg, I know you'll be sitting in front of your set, and I'm sure Terry Bradshaw will be catching every single minute.
I'm sure he will.
It's a beautiful day in Atlanta. Back to you.
All right, Pat, we'll see you tonight. You know, all things considered, Fridge doesn't look like a bad boat these days.
I'd like to pitch to Fridge.
We'll be right back. 1 o'clock kickoffs coming up. Philadelphia at Washington. The #1 defense tries to stop that exploding offense.
Do nothing differently. Come out, go play action, go deep right off the bat. Let Philadelphia know you're not afraid of them. You're going to copy the game plan that Kansas City had.
All right, Terry. Also in Chicago, the Bears host Tampa Bay. Bears have won 10 of the last 11 between these two clubs at Soldier Field. And Green Bay is at Cleveland. Those games coming up for most of you. Terry and I will be back at halftime and throughout the day with scores and highlights. But right now, it's game time on the NFL Today.
This is CBS.